My best friend said, "Daniel's just my really good friend," I replied. "It isn't enough for me." Then we met for coffee, asked for commitment, and took space. Later she texted to clear the air. Then I met Naomi, proposed at her art show, and Leela sent a message, so I blocked her and saved it. Welcome to AF Tales. I, 28M, finally asked my friend, 26F, to define our relationship after 2 years. Her response made me realize I need to step back. As you listen, think about whether you would stay in the gray area or choose clarity even if it costs you someone you care about. I'm Daniel, 28, and I'm a structural engineer who specializes in bridge construction. I've always been straightforward. In my work, you can't guess. You measure, you confirm, you build on what's real. In my personal life, I thought I lived the same way. Then I met Leela. We met at my buddy Brandon's housewarming party about a year ago. Leela works in high-end event planning, the kind with corporate retreats and charity galas. She's social in a way I'm not. She always knows what's happening in the city. She has this energy that pulls people toward her, and when we started talking, it felt easy. Over that year, we started functioning like a couple in every way except officially. I met her parents 3 separate times. I helped her move apartments twice. We were each other's automatic +1s to weddings, work events, and family gatherings. She came with me to my company's awards dinner. She met my sister multiple times. She even helped me pick out a birthday gift for my mom. We took weekend trips together. And when my dad had a minor heart attack scare 6 months ago, Leela drove 3 hours with me to the hospital and stayed the whole weekend. That's not casual behavior. That's someone showing up in a way that matters. This is where I started telling myself a story. I told myself she wasn't big on labels. I told myself we were just taking things slow in a mature way. I told myself it would naturally become official when the time was right. But the truth was simpler. We never defined what we were. Anytime I tried to bring it up, Leela would change the subject smoothly or joke about how labels are overrated. I laughed along because I didn't want to be the guy creating pressure. I didn't want to ruin something that felt good. This is the quiet danger of undefined relationships. You can call it going with the flow. But sometimes the flow is just taking you wherever the other person wants. Friends would ask if we were dating, and I'd give vague answers because I honestly didn't know what to say. It's a weird feeling to realize you're living a life that looks like a relationship, but you can't name it without risking losing it. The breaking point came last weekend at Brandon and Claire's 3rd anniversary dinner. 8 people total. All established couples except us. The conversation was flowing, everyone sharing relationship stories, laughing, relaxed. Then Claire's coworker Sarah looked at Leela and me and said, "You two are so cute together. How long have you been dating?" Without missing a beat, Leela laughed and said, "Oh, we're not dating. Daniel's just my really good friend who happens to be male. We're like the perfect platonic relationship." The table went silent. I felt embarrassed in a way I didn't expect, not because someone asked, but because of how fast she dismissed what we were doing. I managed to laugh it off in the moment, but inside I was reeling. It felt like the ground shifted under me, like I had been standing on something I thought was solid, and she just told everyone it wasn't real. After dinner, I suggested we take a walk. I didn't want to sit in that silence. I didn't want to go home with that feeling. We walked around the neighborhood and I finally said what I'd been thinking for months. "Leela, I need to ask you something directly. I care about you more than I think I've cared about anyone. This past year has been the best of my life, and I'd really love to know where you see this going between us." Her expression shifted immediately. Not surprised exactly, more like she had been dreading this conversation, but knew it was coming. She said, "Daniel, you know you're amazing, right? But I love what we have. We're best friends. We have this incredible connection. Why do we need to complicate it with relationship pressure and expectations?" I asked if she could see us as something more than friends eventually. She sighed and said, "I've seen what happens when people try to force friendships into romantic boxes. It ruins everything. This works perfectly, doesn't it? We have all the fun parts without any of the drama." That's when it hit me hard. It felt like a bridge cable snapping in my head, not because she was cruel, but because the structure suddenly made sense. I was giving her the emotional support, the reliability, the companionship, the consistency, basically everything a boyfriend gives, and she got to keep her options completely open while still calling me her best friend. I told her I needed time to process what she said. She looked surprised and maybe even a little hurt. She said, "Daniel, please don't overthink this. What we have is special." I went home and sat with that for 5 days, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't overthinking. I was finally thinking clearly. I'm 28. I have a solid career, I own my own place, I know how to treat someone well. I want a real relationship with someone who is excited about building something with me, not someone who wants to keep me in romantic limbo while calling it mature. I wasn't angry with Leela. I didn't want revenge. I just didn't want to keep losing pieces of myself in a situation where the other person gets everything they want, and I'm not even allowed to name what I'm feeling. So I decided I needed to step back. I took advice from people who told me to have one honest, final conversation instead of disappearing or dragging it out. I texted Leela and asked if we could meet for coffee at our usual place, the little independent shop near her apartment where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings. I rehearsed what I wanted to say because I wanted it to be simple and final. When we sat down, I told her I'd been thinking a lot since our conversation. I said we want different things. I said I'm looking for a real relationship, exclusivity, commitment, someone excited about building a future together. And I said she wanted to maintain what we had now, and she had a right to want that, but I couldn't keep emotionally investing in something that had no potential to grow into what I actually want. Her reaction was immediate. She looked genuinely shocked, like she had never believed I would actually follow through. She said, "Daniel, you're being so dramatic about this. We have something really special here. Why can't you just appreciate what we have instead of trying to force it into some traditional relationship box?" I told her, "Because what we have isn't enough for me anymore. I want to be with someone who's excited about the possibility of us, not someone who keeps me at arm's length indefinitely." She tried a few different approaches. First, she accused me of throwing away a meaningful friendship over semantics. Then she said romantic relationships inevitably fail, while good friendships last forever, so I was being short-sighted. Then she suggested I was unrealistic about love and romance, and what we had was more mature and evolved than traditional dating. And then she said the comment that really got to me. "You knew what this was from the beginning, Daniel. I never misled you." That stung. It made me question my own memory for a second. But later I realized the truth. I didn't know what it was, and that was exactly the problem. If something is so clear, you shouldn't have to avoid naming it for a year. When I told her I needed significant space, she shifted into what I can now recognize as mild panic. She said I was being unfair. She said she never promised me anything, so I had no right to be upset. And that was the clearest proof of why I needed to leave. I realized I want to be with someone who does want to promise me things. Someone who is happy to commit, not someone who uses "I never promised" as a shield while still taking everything I give. The conversation lasted about 45 minutes. No shouting, no scene. I walked her to her car. I told her I genuinely hoped she'd find whatever makes her happy. I told her I would always value the good times we shared. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but she just nodded and drove away. 4 days passed, and I was surprised by how I felt. Not happy exactly, but relieved. Like I could finally stop mentally cycling through the same questions about where we stood and what every interaction meant. I had clarity I hadn't felt in months. Brandon texted me to ask if everything was okay, because Leela had called Claire upset, saying I was throwing away our friendship over nothing. I gave him the basic situation. His response hit me hard. "Honestly, man, we all assumed you two were together. This actually explains some things, like why Leela would get weird and change the subject whenever anyone mentioned you potentially dating other people." That observation made something click. Apparently, she was possessive enough that our friends noticed, but not committed enough to actually date me. She wanted the benefits of me being unavailable to other women without offering me what I was asking for. That's a painful lesson, but it's also a useful one. I threw myself into positive changes. I got assigned as lead engineer on a major suspension bridge project starting the next month. It was a huge opportunity, and it demanded my focus. And more importantly, I started building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for someone else to decide if I was worth committing to. 8 months passed, and the transformation was real. Professionally, I was thriving. I also started volunteering with Engineers Without Borders, helping design and build footbridges in rural communities. It was meaningful work I had always wanted to do, but never made time for when I was stuck in that undefined relationship. Then, 3 months ago, I met Naomi. We met at a community art exhibition where I was volunteering to help with setup logistics. The event showcased local artists alongside high school students, and Naomi was there as one of the coordinating teachers. Some of her students had pieces in the show. We started talking when she noticed me adjusting the lighting on one of her student sculptures. Instead of small talk, she asked thoughtful questions about how heavier pieces get mounted safely and about the engineering behind the gallery's structure. I was struck by how present she was, not politely interested, but genuinely curious. We talked for 2 hours after the exhibition ended, sitting in the parking lot discussing everything from math and art to infrastructure funding. When she had to leave, she asked for my number and suggested we continue the conversation over coffee. Our first real date was 3 days later. Over dinner, she told me she looked up some of my bridge projects online and was impressed by the environmental considerations in my designs. I had never had someone take that kind of active interest in my work. After our third date, Naomi said something that honestly floored me. "I really like you, Daniel. I'd love to be exclusive and see where this goes. And I'm excited to introduce you to my friends and colleagues as my boyfriend." Just like that. No games. No ambiguity. No year of wondering. The contrast with Leela was almost painful because it showed me how easy it can be when someone actually wants the same thing. Within a month, I'd met Naomi's teacher colleagues, her close friends, even her parents over video calls since they live in Portland. We made plans. Real future plans. She treated our relationship like something valuable she wanted to grow. Then Leela started inserting herself back into my life. For the first few months after our coffee shop conversation, she respected the space. I heard through Brandon and Claire that she was doing fine, dating casually, handling it without drama. But about 6 weeks ago, she started showing up to group events again. The first time was Brandon and Claire's Memorial Day barbecue. I brought Naomi as my official +1, excited to introduce her to my close friends. When we arrived, Leela was already there. At first, it was awkward but manageable. Leela was polite to Naomi, made small talk, seemed normal. But as the evening went on, I noticed a pattern. She kept steering conversations towards shared memories that excluded Naomi. "Daniel, remember when we got completely lost trying to find that underground speakeasy in Brooklyn? Oh, Daniel makes the most amazing pancakes from scratch. I'm sure he's mentioned his secret ingredient technique." Little comments designed to remind everyone that she and I had history Naomi couldn't access. Naomi handled it with grace. She didn't get pulled into it. After we left, she said something that impressed me. "That was Leela, right? She seems possessive for someone who chose to keep things as just friends." 2 weeks later, it got worse at Claire's birthday dinner. 8 people, all couples except Leela, who arrived alone and said her date canceled last minute. Somehow, she maneuvered herself into the seat directly next to me, which meant Naomi ended up across the table. Throughout the dinner, Leela dominated my attention with conversations that excluded Naomi. She asked detailed questions about my bridge project timeline, brought up mutual professional contacts, and talked about conferences we attended together. Then she said, "Daniel, You should tell everyone about that time we drove all the way to Vermont just to try that famous maple syrup farm." When I didn't respond with the enthusiasm she wanted, she added, "We used to do the most random road trips together. It was like having a permanent adventure buddy." Naomi stayed calm. Later she told me it felt like Leela was trying to prove she and I had a deeper connection than what Naomi and I were building. The irony is that Leela and I didn't have deeper commitment. We had closeness without clarity. And now that I finally built something real with someone else, Leela seemed to want the closeness back on her terms. Then, this past Tuesday, Leela texted me for the first time since that coffee conversation. "I really miss our friendship, Daniel. I think there might have been some misunderstandings about what I meant that day. Could we grab coffee sometime soon and talk? I'd love to clear the air." I showed the text to Naomi immediately. She was measured and calm. She said, "I trust you completely, but I think she's testing boundaries right now. Do what feels right to you, but remember what made you step back in the first place." She was right. Leela had a whole year to define what we were and chose not to. I chose to move on. Now that I was genuinely happy, Leela wanted to renegotiate the terms. I didn't respond to the text. I focused on planning something special for Naomi's upcoming birthday, a weekend trip connected to a rural community where we'd be running a collaborative art workshop next month. Naomi was excited about the project, researching local traditions, thinking about how to bring it into her curriculum. I wanted to show up for her the way she showed up for me, and I also made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to tolerate behavior that undermined my relationship, even if it meant some awkwardness in the friend group. Boundaries aren't drama. They're maintenance. Then came the final update I still can't believe I get to say. It's been almost a year since I stepped back from that emotionally confusing situationship with Leela, and 10 months since I started dating Naomi. This past Saturday, I proposed. Naomi was organizing a major community art exhibition at the downtown cultural center. It was a collaboration between her high school students and established local artists. She had poured herself into it for 6 months, trying to give her students a real platform and create something meaningful for the community. The week before opening night, I contacted the center's director and arranged to have a microphone available at the end of the program. I also worked with a vintage jewelry dealer to find the ring. A 1940s emerald-cut solitaire with small accent diamonds, classic and elegant, not flashy. It cost about 2 months of my salary, but it felt right. Opening night was packed. Families, local collectors, school administrators, community members. Naomi was in her element, introducing people to her students and explaining their techniques and ideas. Watching her pride in her students made me fall in love with her all over again. After her formal remarks around 9:00 p.m., I stepped forward and asked if I could say something. She looked confused, but she smiled, probably thinking I was going to give a supportive comment about the event. I spoke into the microphone and said I wanted to say something about the woman who made all of it possible. I looked at Naomi and told her that over the past months, she showed me what it means to truly build something meaningful together. I told her she made me a better person and a better partner, and she showed me what real partnership looks like. Then I got down on one knee in front of the main installation and asked her to marry me. The room erupted. Her students were screaming. Parents were crying. People applauded like they had known us forever. Naomi said yes immediately. She laughed and cried at the same time, and her first words were that she couldn't believe I did this at her exhibition. We spent the next hour celebrating with people, taking photos with her students, accepting congratulations from strangers who just witnessed the moment. Leela wasn't at the gallery opening, but news travels fast in a friend group like ours. Sunday afternoon, I received a long text from her. The main points were that she always thought we would eventually figure things out, that I moved fast with Naomi, and that she wanted to meet before I got married because she had important things to say. The message was full of implications that she had been holding on to romantic feelings the whole time, while also refusing to commit when I asked her directly. I responded with a brief, polite message. I thanked her for the congratulations. I said I was happy with my choices and excited about my future with Naomi. I told her I hoped she finds what she's looking for. Then I blocked her number and blocked her on social media. Not out of anger, out of closure. Naomi and I also made a mutual decision. We are not including Leela in our wedding celebration. We want our wedding to be about our future, not someone else's unresolved feelings about the past. It might create awkwardness with Brandon and Claire, but peace is worth a little awkward. Our wedding is planned for next October. We're doing it outdoors at a vineyard in the Hudson Valley, intimate ceremony with close family and friends. Naomi wants to write our own vows, and we're both excited to plan something that reflects who we are. We're also planning a honeymoon that combines her love of art museums with my interest in innovative bridge designs. 2 weeks in Europe, galleries and architecture together. The difference between being someone's convenient option and being someone's enthusiastic choice is life-changing. I wish I learned that earlier, but I'm grateful I learned it when I did. Lesson 1. If someone avoids defining the relationship while enjoying all the benefits, you are allowed to step back. Lesson 2. Labels are overrated can be a philosophy, or it can be a way to keep options open without accountability. Pay attention to which one it is. Lesson 3. Clarity is not pressure, it's honesty. And if honesty scares someone off, that tells you something. Lesson 4. When you meet someone who wants you the way you want them, dating stops feeling confusing. It starts feeling calm. Lesson 5. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about protecting what you're building. What would you have done if you were in my place, after a year of acting like a couple but being called platonic in public? And if an old situationship started circling back once you finally found real happiness, would you keep the peace or protect your future?